Well, we received a call and from some frantic property owners, some farm owners, who had found an illegally set neck snare, placed on their fence line. And they were very upset about it. They told me that the bobcat was still alive and that they were concerned that it would soon perish. The vast majority of these calls with animals that have been caught in traps, leg hold traps, snares, aren't good. Most of the animals are in such bad shape they have to be euthanized. And then the other ones, oftentimes the animals are dead by the time we get there. In this situation, when we came around the corner and saw this guy, it was obvious he was still in really good shape. He was just angry about his predicament. And so one of the tools we use in restraining cats especially is a packing blanket, a moving blanket. After several attempts of taking this packing blanket with help of the property owners, we were able to finally get it over his head, his upper torso, and able to pin him down to where I had access to his back legs and his torso, which is where the snare was wrapped around. The snare was set, it was what's called a fence set, where it's set at the base of a fence to where when the animal crossed through the snare, it's supposed to grab them around the neck, and then eventually they slowly strangle themselves to death by pulling on the snare. This little guy was fortunate enough to where it caught him around the torso, where he has a lot of his spinal cord obviously, but also there's a lot of muscle there. And he had been in the snare, I figure, maybe 12 hours. It was tight. It was right down to his skin. And it was extremely difficult getting the wire cutters underneath the cable and finding where that point was. And then it was very, very high tensile cable, then clamping down and after repeated attempts, cutting it, and then making sure that the other parts of the cable that were still wrapped around him were untangled from his body, and that when we would let him free, that he would be unencumbered, that he'd be able to bolt. At least this was the hope at the time. But you never know how these situations are going to play out. And from looking at him, the color of his eyes, the color of his gums, he looked in really, really good shape. So I was very optimistic. And it all worked out. We finally were able to free him of the snare and basically pull the blanket off of him. And watch him take off. And it was a extraordinarily rare moment. I've been doing this type of thing most of my adult life, and I have to tell you, this was probably one of the most extraordinary moments for me, in that he was basically unharmed, and he was very vocal, and watching him run off was absolutely breathtaking. After this incident, for the next 6 hours or so, I was on a real adrenaline high. It's a pretty extraordinary experience to have such intimate contact with a wild animal, especially something as beautiful as a bobcat, North American bobcat. Later that evening, I had gone to sleep and woke up in the middle of the night and walked out to my front porch, and it was raining and it was cold. It was bitter cold out. And I all of a sudden thought, what if we didn't get that call? And that this poor little guy would have been there by himself, slowly dying. That thought haunted me, and has haunted me ever since, because while we got that bobcat, at any given time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, we have animals like that bobcat, raccoons, foxes, wolves, struggling in traps, dying horrifically painful deaths, slow deaths, languishing deaths that will never be caught in film. Their stories will never be told. And to me, in this day and age, I find it almost incomprehensible that these types of activities are being carried out by the U.S. government, the USDA, Wildlife Services Lethal Predator Control Program, that they're being promoted by state wildlife management agencies, agencies, wildlife agencies, actually promote these types of activities for children. And the public, for the most part, is largely unaware of this. And these agencies make a great amount of money off of this. And it's really a story that needs to be told. And that, well, we saved that one bobcat, and I hope he never has a run-in with a trap again. That, unfortunately, right now, as I'm talking to you, animals are in traps, slowly dying, suffering incredible pain, oftentimes chewing off limbs to escape the traps, and then dying slow deaths. And I really feel if this case, this extraordinary case of being able to set this animal free does anything, is it opens a public debate. It's time for a national ban on the trapping of wildlife. There's no purpose for this. It's not supported by science. It's basically the wanton destruction of wildlife, and it should be banned. And we're going to do everything we can to make that happen.